This is Jerry Day, your wartime reporter, with a special wartime report to help those who don't think we're at war to catch on that we are. The reason you may not have noticed the war is that World War III is not a bunch of soldiers attacking each other. That's the Ukraine war. World War III is what they call unconventional warfare, as is described in this book, Unrestricted Warfare, written by two Chinese military strategists. This book describes how to destroy and take over a country without actually attacking them with guns. This new war is killing as many people as any other world war, perhaps more, but it kills by famine, cyber attacks, financial disruption, supply chain disruption, biowarfare, media capture and misinformation, environmentalist fanaticism, social and moral decay, and random takedowns of critical infrastructure. This current war has all the propaganda, censorship, and misinformation of any other war. The first piece of misinformation is that there is no war. Another big piece of misinformation is that nobody is using weather to make war. When you hear about droughts, floods, hurricanes, massive crop losses due to, quote, unusual weather, that is not an accident or coincidence. That is weather war. By using a combination of geoengineering, which is atmospheric spraying of metallic particles, and weaponized electromagnetic bombardments, China, Russia, and the United States and other industrialized nations are destroying each other's food production, economies, and commercial infrastructures all over the world. This is World War III, and it is on now, and it has been going for many years. Weaponized weather has been deployed for over 30 years, and it's now perfected to the level where it is doing serious damage globally. If you have seen any shortages at the stores, it is not some accident or misguided public policy. It is because we are at war, and the wrong people are controlling that policy somehow. The evidence of war used to be shooting, bombing, invasions. Nowadays, war looks different. It looks like pandemics, lockdowns, programs of highly destructive health policies. These things are acts of war designed to inflict maximum damage on global populations while avoiding the high costs and risks of conventional war making. They are killing us, we are killing them. We are just doing that in different ways than in past wars. This is not a war of army against army. It is a war of billionaires against civilian populations. Billionaires control governments, so government is just another weapon of war against civilian populations. Yes, your own government can and has been turned against you as a weapon. Do not be confused. The term climate change is wartime propaganda. Any honest and competent climate scientist knows that 96% of the climate is controlled by the sun. 3% of the climate is controlled by volcanoes and wildfires, and less than 1% of the climate is controlled by human activity. There is nothing that humans as individuals can do to change the climate for better or for worse, short of a global nuclear holocaust. If all humans vanished tomorrow, the climate would not change more than 0.1%. And all humans are not going to vanish tomorrow. So the amount we can change the climate is somewhere far less than 0.1%, even if we had the most crushing environmental laws in history. But the weather is changing in very mysterious ways that are tailored to specifically destroy agriculture. Weather has been weaponized. Someone is deliberately changing weather to hurt somebody. China, Russia, the USA, and other countries have refined the techniques of atmospheric spraying and electromagnetic bombardment to cool and heat the atmosphere, to cause it to expand and contract in targeted areas, and to move and change weather patterns in a way to ravage any country's agriculture and food supply. Do you think that knowing that technology exists, those countries would not use it against each other or have not been using it for decades? That is simply naive. They have been using weather modification against each other for many years, and they are now getting very good at destroying agriculture over broad geographical areas. It takes very little disruption to the weather to destroy agriculture. The weather war is real. The idea that carbon is bad is not real. Carbon, we are told, is a pollutant, a toxin which destroys the atmosphere and changes the climate. Those are lies. Carbon is plant food, and without a lot of carbon in the atmosphere, we don't get to have plants. Carbon has been at higher levels in our atmosphere many times throughout history and long before the Industrial Revolution. Those periods of high atmospheric carbon are periods where forests and jungles thrived, agriculture thrived, and the human species took great leaps forward thanks to the abundance of food. When we take carbon out of the atmosphere, we prevent food from getting to our supermarkets. The climate can change to make the weather more friendly to food production, but we are told climate change is always bad. If the climate gets bad, the climate has to change to get good again. If we actually found a way to stop the climate from changing, we would all be dead shortly after that. The term climate change is one of those catchphrases which are supposed to tell us to be afraid of some overwhelming disaster. But when you examine the science, there is no disaster attributable to climate change, but rather only to weather manipulation. So if we know it or not, if we want to believe it or not, the term climate change refers to a war, not some ecological accident. The term climate change refers to the deliberate destruction of national food supplies, not some global consequence of normal human activity. You are not causing climate change. The amount of climate change that human populations are causing is too small to even be measured, if it exists at all. And if the climate is changing, it is not changing any more than it has in regular cycles for the last 500,000 years. That hockey stick theory was proven in a court of law to be a fabrication and totally false. Climate change is caused by technological modification of weather by narrow interests for the purpose of destroying their enemy's food supply. That food supply destruction is being done by many countries against each other. So global food supply is now failing and shortages will be everywhere, especially in places which have no margin against famine. Modern war makers, especially China, do not attack directly. They invest, they buy up entire industries and simply shut them down. They buy up media and spread bad information like telling everyone to lock down. But by far the easiest way to damage a nation is with its weather. They spray toxic metallic particles in the air, they bombard those particles with electromagnetic charges, and they cause parts of the atmosphere to heat or cool, expand or contract, and by doing that, they can cause weather to move around and change in a way to destroy agricultural production. It is easy. It is cheap. It can bring your political enemies to their knees, and it is foolish to think it is not going on. They're doing this to us, we are doing this to them, so the effect is the destruction of the entire world's food supply. This, in combination with our fragile currency, our massive public debt levels, our global supply chain breakdowns, and the consequences will be staggering. This will plunge the world into one of the darkest chapters in human history. This is what World War III looks like. Anything that one country can do to damage another country is part of this war. Social divisions that get us fighting among ourselves. Idiotic theories that have us questioning what genders our children are. Anything that fractures society and has us chasing our own tails. Helps to deplete and destroy us as the enemy. In an odd way, this stealth war is delaying the worst of it. Because as soon as we go to conventional warfare, somebody is going to start shooting off nukes. And then the human race is out the window. But any kind of warfare tends to escalate. So it doesn't really matter if we start with little secret wars. Wars always tend to escalate, and that means a lot of things get destroyed and a lot of people get killed. There's no such thing as a good war. The best thing a war can be is something that kills all the bad people. Wars are not a mechanism of reform, they just kill. It seems to be China's hope that they can wear us down enough with the unconventional war that it will be basically just a mop-up operation for China in the end. Of course, it will not be that simple, because people will start shooting off nukes. It is called escalation, and once certain things occur, escalation cannot be stopped. Before it is too late, we may be able to de-escalate, but we will have to recognize that weather is weaponized. Climate change is a wartime propaganda term, not an ecological crusade. The sun and the volcanoes have not done anything to drought and flood the major industrial nations' agricultural regions. That was done by weather war, geoengineering, electromagnetic, atmospheric bombardment. Have you ever noticed that the weather girl never tells you when there is an atmospheric discharge of electromagnetic energy from one of those HAARP facilities? If she did, it would make the weather war quite obvious. The climate change narrative is essential for making people not see the weather wars. And the weather wars are essential for wearing down our enemies before the shooting war starts. It's like the artillery pummeling the coastline just ahead of the infantry beach landing. Unless we put a stop to weather weaponization, we may be walking straight into a global nuclear inferno down the line. Your media has been disguising weather war as accidental climate change caused by irresponsible public consumption of commercial products and energy usage. They twist facts and reality to blame you for what they are doing. This is propaganda. It is wartime disinformation. Yes, human consumption causes pollution, depleted resources, but human consumption does not cause climate change. Climate change is a term of war and part of a bigger war, which includes cyber attacks, political infiltration, industrial sabotage, media censorship and misinformation, bioweapons, and media-hyped pandemics. If there is a pandemic, somebody caused that. If there's climate change, somebody is causing that. We are at war, and these are the tools of modern warfare. Governments are attacking each other without telling their populations what is going on. We are all victims of this, and the longer we let it go, the harder it will be to stop it. People are going to starve. People are going to riot, loot, panic, and go completely lawless. At some point, police will be able to do very little to contain this. They did almost nothing during the 2020 riots. So just to be clear, climate change is a wartime propaganda diversionary narrative. You are not responsible for climate change. Geoengineering is. The billionaires who control governments are doing the geoengineering because they think it's time for a depopulation or a religious Armageddon or a shift to global hegemony from west to east, or maybe they have simply run out of resources with which to maintain the Western lifestyle and they're trying to orchestrate the collapse so they remain in charge. But they are using your government to make this happen. It is done by global infiltration, influence, and finance, and a lot of dirty tricks to soften the targets. It is not a climate problem, it is a central power problem. It is now a war problem, and if we want to survive, we're going to have to learn how to fight this war. We have to learn to see where the war is being fought today, in the weather, the droughts, the floods, the pandemics, the computer hacks, the sabotage of food distribution and railroads, the propaganda and censorship, and all this is about to go bigger very soon. One thing is certain, we will not be able to fix this if people refuse to see that there is a war going on. In a war, the people who survive are those who grow food, become self-reliant, form community, fight off thieves and poachers, and avoid being plundered by the state. It takes time to put all that together. So the people who survive are not just those who do those things, but who do them early.
Please support these videos by visiting our sponsor page at preparewithjerry.com for our top quality, long-term storage emergency food. We work with the nation's top supplier, which has delivered several million orders to homes just like yours. And we do mean long-term storage. With one order, you have emergency food lasting up to 25 years, as near as your closet or pantry. These food kits can get you and your family through any difficulties that may lie ahead. We update PrepareWithJerry.com regularly with seasonal discounts and special packages. Having food storage at hand is more than insurance. It is peace of mind. Go to PrepareWithJerry.com. PrepareWithJerry.com.